Good morning. My name is Deb Gang, and I'll be leading today's service. Reverend Matt Ellsbaugh will be presenting our message this morning. Our opening words today are by Molly Hausch Gordon. We gather together this morning tenderly, like drops of dew on a leaf of grass, hopefully like gathered raindrops in a cloud. Gleefully like water rushing in a stream to the sea, deeply like groundwater pulled up from a well. We gather from every direction for another year of growth and depth, another year of companionship and hope, another year of learning to love this world. We gather like the water that joins us across all of creation, the water that connects us within and without, merging and flowing across the entire world. And so now I just want to welcome you with live from Fellowship Hall. It's our LCUUF Sunday service. Our announcements were on a slideshow before the service. If you didn't see them, they were sent out by email yesterday with the order of service for today. A few notes: our building is open to all for in-person services. We continue to offer our service on Zoom each Sunday for those who are unable to attend in person. Wearing masks in the fellowship building is required at this time. And for today's service, if you are on Zoom, I invite you, if you wish, to get a cup and a bowl and put some water in the cup. Do this anytime you like. We'll need it later. And now a special welcome to our visitors. If you're visiting with us for the first time or have returned or reconnected with us after a long absence, we invite you to say your name and where you're from. If you're on Zoom, use the Zoom raise hand feature or just turn your video on and wave your hand, and we'll ask you to unmute. If you're in the room, just raise your hand. Or anybody new? Doesn't look like it today. Anybody on Zoom?
Nobody on Zoom?
Yes, sir. Nobody?
Nobody.
Okay. Our chalice lighting words today are by Katie Gelfin. We light this chalice as a symbol of reunion. We reunite in this sanctuary to share the flow of our hearts with one another. We gather together in ritual to celebrate our fountains of joy, to hold each other through storms of grief, to guide one another through rapids of transformation, to rest together on ponds of stillness. Together we honor the spirit of water, its many forms, and its life-giving essence. Now let us light our chalice with these words that we sing together.
Kindle this night in celebration for the life that we share.
Our opening hymn is Come, Come, Whoever You Are, written by Lynn Unger. We'll sing this a couple of times. Those of you who are musically adventurous can sing the descant. I don't even know what that means. Though you've broken your vows 1,000 times. Please rise as you are willing and able and join us in singing. Or we'll do it one time. Each week, we take time to remind ourselves that we belong to a community which cares for each other. We do this by sharing any significant joys or sorrows in our lives. If you have a joy or sorrow to share today, you can type it into the chat now and we'll read those aloud. First, let us recall the joys, whatever you may be celebrating, whatever evokes a feeling of joy or peace for yourself or others. We'll start here in the room. Are there any joys that people would like to share?
My joy is that we just found a delightful little restaurant, the Art Cafe down the street, so when the bus is early, we have a nice place to eat.
Okay. Yes.
Hi, I'm Dee Dee Camhigh, and we've been gone over 2 months, and it's really nice to be back here.
All right. Are there any joys to be shared on Zoom?
Yes, there are. From Deborah Kelly, I am grateful for having had time for family and friends here in New Hampshire, and also happy to be heading back home on Tuesday. That's it for the joys.
Thank you, Richard. Now let us voice our sorrows or concerns, whatever you or the world may be holding that is in need of our healing and caring thoughts. Again, we'll start with the folks here. Are there any sorrows that people would like to share here in the room?
This is not major. Can you hear me? Okay. But it's a sorrow to me because I lose things. And I lost my iPad somewhere between here and Nueva Vallarta, I think. But I believe strongly in the group consciousness, so I'm going to ask for lots of intentional loving for my laptop.
And maybe will make its way home.
Are there any sorrows to be shared on Zoom today?
Yes. From Robert Barnett, please light candles in remembrance of my cousin Danny, who died on Tuesday, and Kat's Aunt Patty, who died last Saturday. And that's what we have from Zoom.
And this candle represents those sorrows that are too raw, too difficult for us to share aloud. So many of us have had losses, partners, children, grandchildren, pets, friends, losses that remain present with us every day. So many of us have burdens that weigh heavy on our hearts. We light this candle for all those unspoken sorrows. Let us share a moment of silence to hold in our hearts both the sorrows and the joys that have been shared this morning. This is the time in our service when we ask that you remember that we share our gifts here through pledging and donations. Instructions for payments to the fellowship were in the announcements before the service. For the people here at the fellowship, we'll pass a basket. And while you're considering your gifts to the fellowship, remember that each month LCUUF donates 5,000 pesos or more to an organization in our Lakeside community. We share one half of the offering collected at the fellowship each week with that organization. For the month of August, we will be supporting Poco a Poco, which helps people in the San Pedro Itzican area. One of the services they provide is feeding children and adults who are vulnerable to kidney disease. They now have 6 community kitchens in the area. This year, Poco a Poco has received the gift of a piece of property near Mescala with a warehouse. and is now in the first steps of creating a community garden and a kitchen so that the people they serve can learn about planting and maintaining a garden, harvesting and cooking all in the same place. Pocoapoca wants this garden to be only planted with heritage plants so that they can be harvested, seeds collected, and new plants grown. At this time, they need seeds, tools, and helpers for the project. The offering has been given and received.
Part 1. Today is our water communion, a service which many Unitarian Universalist congregations celebrate around this time of year. It's typically a kind of an ingathering, a coming together after summer vacations and travel and relaxation. For us in Mexico, this is the temporada de lluvias, the wet season, and so the water service has a special significance for us at this time of year, especially after last night when many of us lost power due to the hailstorm that we had in Ajijic. But today, let's reflect on a particular interpretation of Unitarian Universalist faith, one which I've seen summarized in this sentence. It's a kind of a UU theology. Our historic Unitarian and Universalist theologies remind us of two very important truths: that we come from the same source and we're fated to the same destination. As such, our lives are bound up in one another's lives. And so let's do a little exercise using water as a metaphor to imagine where we come from, as if we were drops of water, as drops from thunderclouds we come. Kat will lead this ritual.
Today, we're going to make rain. Not that we really need to, but this is something that we used to do at Girl Scout camp, and I remembered it when we were thinking about this service. We're going to start by rubbing our hands together for the soft rain. Then, snap your fingers. Rain's a little bit harder. And you can add a toe tap if you're coordinated enough. Okay, now we're going to make the thunder. Stamp your feet. Back to snapping. As the rainstorm passes over, as they do here, they're usually small, don't last too long. And we end with the soft rain. Sorry.
But we can think of water as a metaphor for many things. And when we begin to look, we find that many religious traditions see water as a symbol for oftentimes profound and sometimes subtle concepts important to those traditions. The Judeo-Christian traditions, for example, from which Unitarian Universalism evolved, water, especially flowing water, is often used as a metaphor. So, for example, a metaphor for refreshment from spiritual thirst. And so we have, for example, Isaiah 12:3. Yes, that was quite successful, I think, the water thing. With Isaiah says, with joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation. Or water may symbolize cleaning and purification. Amos 5:24, where the Jews are told by God to let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Some of you may well recognize that from a certain hymn that we love to sing here. And water could be seen as a metaphor for salvation. In this case, from the New Testament, John chapter 4:13. This is where Jesus meets the woman at the well, and he says, everyone who drinks of this water, pointing to the well water, will be thirsty again. But those who drink the water that I will give them will never be thirsty. The water that I will give will become in them a spring of water gushing up eternal life. But here's an interesting thing I noticed about looking at water in the Judeo-Christian traditions. It's that typically water in these examples is instrumental. It is an agent. It is a means to an end. In the Eastern traditions, things are different. Water is oftentimes a metaphor for ourselves singly within. Water is subjective. So here's an example. In the Hindu text of the Chandogya Upanishad, we hear, as the rivers flowing east and west merge into the stream and become one with it, forgetting that they were ever separate streams, so do all creatures lose their separateness when they merge at last into pure being. So we are rivers, we are merging, we have this opportunity at the end to become into a kind of oneness. Here's another example. This is a Taoist example from the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. And he says, the best, like water, benefit all and do not compete. They dwell in lowly spots that everyone else scorns. Putting others before themselves, they find themselves in the foremost place and come very near to the Tao, to the Tao. And so this one is kind of prescriptive. It's kind of giving us advice to be like water, in which case our lives will be good and we will be revered. Now, another longer example is a parable from the Sufi tradition. Now, Sufis are Muslim, so they're kind of in the Western realm, but they're heavily influenced by Hindu and Buddhist ideas. So they tend to be much more metaphysical, at least in my mind, than the other paths of Islam. So this is part 2. This is transformation, and the story that we're going to act out is the stream. Well, this is more like reader's theater. We're not going to actually be, flowing and dripping and running and all that kind of stuff.
This is a story called The Stream. A stream from its course in far-off mountains, passing through every kind and description of countryside, at last reached the sands of the desert. Just as it had crossed every other barrier, the stream tried to cross this one, but found that as fast as it ran into the sand, its waters disappeared. It was convinced, however, that its destiny was to cross this desert, and yet there was no way. Now a hidden voice coming from the desert itself whispered,
"The wind crosses the desert, and so can the stream."
The stream objected that it was dashing itself against the sand and only getting absorbed, that the wind could fly, and this was why it could cross the desert. The voice responded,
"By hurtling your own accustomed way, you cannot get across. You will either disappear or become a marsh. You must allow the wind to carry you over to your destination."
But how could this happen?
said the stream.
"By allowing yourself to be absorbed in the wind."
This idea was not acceptable to the stream. After all, it had never been absorbed before. It did not want to lose its individuality, and once having lost it, how was one to know that it could ever be regained?
The wind,
Said the sand.
performs this function. It takes up water, carries it over the desert, and lets it fall again. Falling as rain, the water again becomes a river.
How can I know that this is true?
It is so, and if you do not believe it, you cannot become more than a quagmire. And even that could take many, many years. And it certainly is not the same as a stream.
But can I not remain the same stream that I am today?
You cannot in either case remain so.
The whisper said.
Your essential part is carried away and forms a stream again. You are called what you are even today because you do not know which part of you is the essential one.
When it heard this, certain echoes began to arise in the thoughts of the stream. Dimly, it remembered a state in which it, some part of it, had been held in the arms of a wind. It also remembered, or did it, that this was the real thing, not necessarily the obvious thing to do. And the stream raised its vapor into the welcoming arms of the wind, which gently and easily bore it upwards and along, letting it fall softly as soon as they reached the roof of the mountain, many, many miles away. And because it had its doubts, the stream was able to remember and record more strongly in its mind the details of the experience. It reflected.
Yes, now I have learned my true identity.
And now let us enter into a time of meditation. Just a simple silent meditation, perhaps reflecting on the nature of that story, if you like. Perhaps just observing the image that will be on the screen, or perhaps just going inward and being quiet with yourself. And so you might just get comfortable in your chair. Close or soften your eyes or observe the screen. Just for a couple of minutes, we will rest here in a time of meditation. And let us return to this time, this place. Stop tripping on the screen and begin again. The water Water undergoes transformation, the phase change from liquid to vapor, changing in a qualitatively different way. And our lives can be like that too. We can undergo transformation, become qualitatively different people at times in our lives. Now, this doesn't happen to everyone. Some rivers never encounter a desert, just as some people never in their lifetimes struggle. But most of us do encounter challenges in our lives. These challenges may be external things. They may be losses, setbacks, financial disasters, people around us die, we get sick, we deal with illness, maybe permanent debility. They also may be internal, things like doubt, depression, acedia, that is a form of spiritual uncertainty or depression. These things can weigh inside us. And I suspect that at least some of you, perhaps many of you, are Unitarian Universalists because you have encountered these kinds of challenges in your life. And perhaps you are here in this space because you needed that voice, that authentic guide within inside you, that still small voice, to help try to sort through what life is giving you, to deal with the possibility that there may be a desert in front of you. Or perhaps you are here more because you needed to be around other people who have similar challenges in their lives. You needed the wind of this place, of this faith, to carry you, to lift you up for a bit, to bring on this transformation, to offer a different identity, a true identity. And all of this is good. I am glad you're here. I think all of us, each of us, are glad the others are here and that we have this community. But I want to note a couple of warnings on this path, on this kind of journey. The first one is simply that some people cannot let go. Just as in the stream story, it sounded like the stream struggled to be willing to let the wind carry it across the desert. In some cases, these people would rather form a quagmire, to become stuck in the familiar and the safe. Because after all, the wind could take them anywhere, and that would be scary. Now, I'm sure most of us know people like that. People who are stuck in their lives, unhappy, and yet unwilling to change, unwilling to risk anything new. And I know that many of us have been that kind of person at times. I certainly was in my 20s. My life felt like it was going nowhere, that it was metaphorically draining into that marsh. Now, admittedly, the outside appearances were deceiving. I had a good job. I had material success. I had friends, but the quagmire was inside me. And during that time, I was grateful to find a Unitarian Universalist community and to gradually open myself to the transformation. And that was good. But here's another danger. Sometimes the spiritual community that you find has its own dangers, its own worries. This can happen here too. You can get absorbed by the spiritual community, the religious community. You might become a true believer, get totally enmeshed in everything the community has to say, to accept it uncritically. And this is one way to look at this danger is it's called spiritual bypassing. Now that's a term from the psychologist John Wellwood back in 1984. The idea of this spiritual bypassing is that we use our spirituality to avoid doing the hard work of transformation. So just like the stream wanted to try to just push through the desert, to avoid transformation, we can get wrapped into our own spiritual sense that we can just push through. So people can use their spiritual beliefs and practices to avoid facing issues in their lives, truly to avoid transformation. Sometimes it's even more dangerous. People may even believe that their transformation is already complete, that they have already done all the work they need to do, that they are awakened, that they are born again, that they have achieved nirvana, or whatever it is for their own particular spiritual paths. And so, having reached this exalted state, they try to shore up their beliefs and push away anything that might be, threatening to their beliefs. Even those beliefs that might be weak, untenable, that need to be critically evaluated and changed to get a full understanding of their own life. So people use their beliefs to resist facing the hard stuff of life. I think of Kate Ballard, who was a theologian at Duke Divinity School. She was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer at age 35. And people, well-meaning people, told her things like, everything happens for a reason, or God never gives you more than you can handle. And she took all this stuff in and wrote a book. After all, she's an academic. She wrote a book called Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I've Loved, to explore why people respond this way. Why can't they just say, wow, colon cancer, that's awful, I'm sorry. And sometimes having things like that arise is just how life is. And I think that transformation, real spiritual transformation, is about getting comfortable with that reality in whatever spiritual tradition you're connected with. There's an old Buddhist story shared by Ram Dass about the great Tibetan Buddhist teacher Marpa Latsala. I don't know when Marpa lived, but it was a long time ago. I think it was not that many years or centuries after the Buddha himself. So one day, the story goes, Marpa's eldest son was killed. And so off by himself, alone with his grief, Marpa wept. One of his students approached him and said, I don't understand. You teach that all of this is illusion, created by the clinging and desire and resistance. And yet here you are weeping. This is probably one of those students that was, kind of spiritually bypassing all over the place. The student continued, well, if this is all illusion, then why do you grieve so deeply? The student is probably imagining, well, if I actually gotten to nirvana or whatever, I wouldn't have to suffer. And Marpa said, well, yes, everything here is an illusion. And the death of a child is the greatest of these illusions. So for me, I love that Marpa didn't pretend. He didn't try to explain away grief, because it is real and it is transformative. Sometimes, for some of us, grief is the desert we have to cross. Part 3. So returning to the water. What I find most attractive is how water is used metaphorically by the mystics of these Eastern traditions. Again, the water metaphor is one of flowing to the sea, of returning to the source, of merging with unity. However we might like to see that. I want to just offer a few examples. So Kabir, who was a poet and weaver, I think in India, who was claimed by both the Muslims and the Hindus, although I believe he didn't claim either of those paths. He writes, as the rivers flow down the hills and become one with the sea, so has this weaver's love flowed to become one with the Lord of love. And Jalaluddin Rumi, The mystic who founded the Sufi branch of Islam often used water as a metaphor. So he says, plunge into the vast ocean of consciousness. Let the drop of water that is you become 100 mighty seas. But do not think that the drop alone becomes the ocean. The ocean, too, becomes the drop. So is there a theme here? The story of water to these mystics is a story of union, of merger. It may be a story of returning, of cycling, of arriving for the first time, but it is about becoming one with something much larger. In Rumi's metaphysics, just as you become part of that ocean of consciousness, it too becomes part of you. No ego trip here where your drop defines the whole oceans in all the world, but it's a mix of both going both ways. But here's a question: how do you become aware of these things? Again, the mystics suggest it is through epiphany, enlightenment, transformation. Here's Rumi again. The source is within you, and this whole world is springing up from it. The source is full, and its waters are ever flowing. Do not grieve, but drink your fill. Don't think it will ever run dry. This is the endless ocean. And Kabir, again, this is continuing on from the previous text. He says, go deeper and deeper in meditation to reach the seabed of consciousness. The seabed, what is that like? Well, the Buddha tells us a little bit about that seabed in his own understanding. He says, as on the deepest ocean floor no waves occur, so too may all spiritual aspirants be still, attain calm, and in their minds no wave will swell. So to the mystics, being in the water, being of the water, being in the process of joining, of merging with whatever is, that which is much larger and more profound than us, however we name it, going deep, this is the power. The water of life becomes merged into one unified ocean. The drop that is us becomes part of that endless ocean, and the ocean too becomes our drop. And all is calm, and all is tranquil. This is the deep message of many great religions, as interpreted by their prophets and their mystics. All of our particular paths lead down to a common end. This is the universal truth. This is why we keep the word universalist in our name. We are led to that common end that offers peace, that offers interconnection, that offers depths of conscious awareness, that offers unity to that which is larger than us. And so now the water communion. We know exactly when the water communion started in Unitarian Universalism. It originated in 1980 from the Women in Religion Convocation. This was an annual gathering at the time, which this particular one they called Coming Home, like rivers to the sea. And the women were invited to bring water from their homes, and they merged it all together in a ritual. Many of those women took this idea of the ritual home to their congregations, and it grew. And as things often do, it was modified, changed. And unfortunately, in many places, it changed into essentially a travel log. Where did I go on vacation this summer? And at worst, that reeked of privilege, even a bit competitive. Who went farther to more exotic places? Some of you may remember congregations like that. I do. So we want to return to the original meaning, the sense of the merger of water symbolizing unity, symbolizing that we come from the same place, that we are unified, Unitarian, and that we return all of us to one universally. So for those on Zoom, I invite you, if you have not already done so, again, if you want to get a cup and a bowl and put a little water into the cup. And here at the fellowship, we have a pitcher and a larger bowl. And in this particular ritual, we witness, we acknowledge, and we celebrate the movement, the flow, the pouring of the water, the pouring out. Water's power is in its movement. As we know, the flow of water in our bodies, in our veins, is what gives us life. The circulation of the climate, the water, is what makes the world we know possible. But first, before we begin, let us bless the water, acknowledging water's sacredness in our lives.
Today's reading is by Ranwa Hamami. It is called Blessing of the Water. I will speak and then invite you, when I hold up the pitcher like this, to say, this water is sacred. In this way, we together bless this water. It is made sacred by the many hands that have poured it with intention and love, the many stories that each drop contains, the many lives surrounding it in this unique moment, connected by commitment and faith. May it continue to flow through this community with shining reflections of the unique gifts that flow through each of its members. May it continue to nurture this community with sustaining hope that we journey together through ripples of growth and change. May it continue to bless this community with loving reminders of our collective responsibility to one another and to the world. May its ripples be a reminder that the changes and growth within this community bring movement and transformation to the world beyond our doors. May its purity offer grace to our community and the willingness to forgive ourselves and one another when we make mistakes. In moments when we are confused or uncertain, may it bring us clarity of purpose and commitment. In moments when the reservoirs of hearts and spirits are drained by sorrow or pain, may it nourish them with the knowledge that we are surrounded by a deep and abundant love.
And so now, I invite you to think of a word that embodies that sense of water and of its movement for you. Realize, this does not have to be a unique or overly creative word. Just find a word that fits for you. And then on Zoom, whenever you're ready, turn on your camera and hold up your cup. And when Richard spotlights you, unmute and hold the bowl up in front of your face and pour out a little bit of water into the bowl. And of course, having unmuted, say your word, the word that embodies water, its movement or change for you. We'll do that right now, and then we will organize in the fellowship.
Coming together. I'm unmuting Devorah.
flow.
Flow.
Good. Trudy? Oh, I lost Trudy. There she is. Trudy, we didn't hear your word.
I had to unmute. Security.
Thank you. I don't see any more water. Come on. Hi, there's John DeWall. Unmute, please.
Life.
Very good. Do we have something from Doug?
So flowing.
Thank you, Doug. So I'm going to return you to the studio now.
Okay, here in the fellowship, we'll invite people to line up on the left side over here if you want to participate. Just form a line right up to where the bowl is here. And what we're going to do is the same thing here. I'll invite you to come up, pour a little bit of water, just a little bit, from this pitcher into this bowl, and you can say your word into the microphone that Deb will have for you. Yeah, why don't you be over there? Okay. And so come this way, yeah, Johannes, and be on this side so you face the audience. And then say your word.
The flow of life.
Flow of life.
Metaphorically. Freedom. Ripple. Refreshment.
I was going to say refreshment, but she beat me to it.
Nurture. Hope. Cool. Low.
Fluid.
Blessing.
Energy.
Glacier.
Hot tub.
Healthy.
And so water symbolizes flow, transformation. Well, it symbolizes all these words, really. but I also think of this sense of meaning coming together. It symbolizes unity, for as the rivers flow into the sea, all water is one water. This we have done today with our water, recognizing our common origins, our transformation, our coming together, our ingathering, uniting, unifying, being together for the year to come. May it be so. And our closing hymn is As Tranquil Streams. This hymn was written in 1933 for the first combined Unitarian and Universalist hymnal, which was long before the two denominations actually merged together to become Unitarian Universalism in 1960. So please rise and join me in singing.
As tranquil streams that meet and merge and flow as one to seek the sea, our kindred hearts and minds unite to build a church that shall be free, free from the bonds that bind the mind to narrow thought of lifeless greed, free from a social code that fails to save the cause of human need, a freedom that reverses the past, but trusts the dawning future more, and bids the soul in search of truth adventure boldly and explore. Prophetic church, the future waits, your liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love, proclaim the truth that makes us free.
Let us be a religious community in which each of us is spiritually engaged, exploring the deepest questions of life, that we find ourselves constantly changing and growing as we become more spiritually mature, that we are people of transformation, that we welcome everyone into the flowing, changing stream that is this community, like streams merging into great rivers and into the sea. We are many, we are one. Waters merging with waters, flowing together in the cycle of life. We are many, we are one.
Let us extinguish our chalices with these words, which we read together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts and share with all the world. you.